I'm very pleased to have with us Evan Todd, who has actually written a letter to President Obama, like many of you, expressing his opposition to the president's gun control plans. Evan, thank you for coming on the show today.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
You bet. And I got to thank Glenn Beck as well for helping to get your story out there. I've come to the conclusion that the media, generally speaking, doesn't want to hear from people like you, Evan, victims of violent crime, unless you support the president's gun control plans. Do you agree?
Excuse me. Yeah. They definitely don't like hearing our side of the position.
So let's talk a little about your background. You were injured at Columbine?
Yeah, I was hit in the lower left side of my back, and then I had from another gunshot that blew back pieces of a desk and computer, wood splinters, and plastic into my face.
I can't even imagine what you must have gone through, and I'm curious. I mean, you've written this very eloquent letter to President Obama expressing your opposition to gun control. Did you, Evan? Did your views change at all? Did you tell me how you came to the conclusions that you've reached?
Well, before Columbine, I didn't really pay attention much to the politics and policies and stuff, but I was around guns. I was in Boy Scouts. I went through NRA certification through the Boy Scouts. Did a lot of shooting from, BB guns, 22s, 12 gauge, all the way up to, some of the high-powered rifles. And that was a good experience that I had. And then after Columbine, I started paying attention to and hearing the gun control debates. And as I tried to stay out of it for quite a while, mainly because I really wanted to make up my own mind, and it just kept, every time I would dissect it, the evidence showed that the gun control measures and the things that they try and pass after these tragedies, they don't have any effect on, of stopping these things, and really, in actuality, they hinder everyday Americans from protecting themselves, which I think perpetuates the problem.
A lot was made a few weeks ago when Wayne LaPierre came out and talked about the need for armed security in schools.
Mm-hmm.
One of the arguments we heard a lot, Evan, until the president said, yeah, I kind of like that idea too, was, well, there was an armed deputy at Columbine and he couldn't stop it. Well, I'm curious what your thoughts are about when you heard that argument.
Well, yeah, there's a couple of things with that. Columbine was, in a sense, similar to 9/11. It was unprecedented. The protocol back then was completely different from what they've developed now in most, if not all, law enforcement agencies, which they do an amazing job. The only problem is they're not there all the time. The law enforcement does a great job on active shooter scenarios. They trained well. They're amazing people, and I commend them for it and thank them for it, because they've done some really good things over the years in this area.
Right.
But the fact is it was different back then, and I know that officer, knowing what he knows now, I don't think his reaction would have been the same. And also, it was just one man. I think security guards are great. I think law-abiding citizens with carry concealed weapons permits should have the right to defend themselves on school grounds as well. Teachers, other faculty members, they have that right in America to defend themselves and defend others, to protect innocent lives.
So, Evan, what made you decide that you wanted to speak out and write this open letter to President Obama?
Well, it really started out with an old friend of mine, Billy Hollowell, over at the Blaze. He obviously knew that I went through Columbine, and when all the gun debates sparked up, he sent me a few emails saying he wanted to do a story on my views, and we were emailing back and forth. And one of the questions he asked was if I had the chance to say something to President Obama, what would I say? And I sat down and started typing that email up, and it turned out I just started writing a letter because that was the best way my thoughts, and I sent it over to him. I thought he was just going to, pick some quotes out of it and do a story, and he sent back and said, "Hey, we need to publish this." So I said, "Go for it," and it's been quite a reaction, larger than I expected.
Well, I'm glad, Evan, that the reaction and reception has been larger than what you expected, because it means that people are actually hearing what you have to say. And I think that's the whole point. I mean, President Obama in his State of the Union address talked about the victims of gun violence deserving a vote. Well, I think everybody who wants to speak deserves a voice too.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely.
And
Absolutely.
it seems to me, Evan, that you've really put a lot of thought into this. You sound like a very reasonable individual, which I'm guessing, frankly, is probably one reason why a lot of media outlets won't want to have you on their program, because you do a really effective job of undercutting the president's case, quite frankly.
Well, thank you. Yeah, and this isn't just something that I typed up overnight. This is many years of paying attention to what actually happens, the gun debate, the consequences of gun laws, and this is something that I've paid attention to over the years, and I've studied and drawn my own conclusions, and that's what developed in that letter that I wrote.
Have you ever gotten any grief, Evan, from other survivors who say, "Evan, I just don't understand how you can feel this way"?
Yeah, I have. Not only Columbine, but there are other survivors that are vocal for the gun control lobby, and and they're entitled to their First Amendment rights as well, and we disagree, and I try to present my argument, and they do the same, and I understand that there's a difference in that, but the fact is there's a Bill of Rights, and that includes the Second Amendment.
Well, absolutely, and I'm curious as well, Evan. Are there, and you don't have to name names or anything, but as you've talked with other survivors of shootings like this, are there others who've come up to you and said, "Evan, I agree with you, actually"?
Oh, absolutely. There's a lot of other Columbine alumni who, excuse me, over the last 24 hours have been sending me texts and emails and messages telling me that they're happy somebody's standing up and speaking out.
Well, that's great, and I hope, Evan, that you will and they will be encouraged to stand up and speak out right alongside you as well, because their voices deserve to be heard too.
Yes, I do.
Evan, again, sir, thank you so much for coming on the program. It is great to get a chance to talk with you, and would love to have you back on.
Thank you, sir. I'd look forward to it.